Governor, thanks for joining us here tonight.
Thanks, Caitlin.
I don't think that we've gotten your raw reaction to the audio that CNN got this week of Trump talking about classified documents with people who didn't have security clearances. What went through your mind as you listened to that 2-minute or so clip?
Sounds just like him. I mean, the thing that struck me the most was that is what Donald Trump is like most of the time, constantly rationalizing his own bad behavior, justifying what he's doing at the very moment that he's doing it, even when he knows it's wrong, and showing off. He's the consummate show-off. And I think that's what that tape was, him showing off. People asked me, going all the way back to the time of the raid last year of Mar-a-Lago, like, why would he keep these documents? People were like, is he going to give them to a foreign government or sell them to somebody or blackmail people? Like, you don't understand Donald Trump. It's just to show off. He wants to continue to act like he's president. He can't live with the fact that he's not. And so that's why he kept those documents. It seems childish and stupid, and it is, but that's the reason why, in my view, he's always kept them.
You've compared it to a child sticking their hand into a cookie jar.
Yeah, I mean, look, he knows it's wrong, and he acknowledged that on the tape that you all got. You know, he says, like, look, this is classified, it's secret. You know, I could have declassified when I was president, but I didn't. And now I can't, you know, I can't have this. I can't show it to you. Well, you know, he knows these things are wrong, but he is like that child who tests the parent constantly. You know, and that is what is just so maddening about this. None of this had to happen. If he tries to play victim now, Caitlin, oh, poor me, they're going after me. They tried for 18 months, quietly, privately, to get him to return the documents. From February of 2021 through to August of 2022, they wrote, they called, they met with lawyers, they ultimately served a grand jury subpoena. They did everything they could up to and not including a raid. He would not give them the documents back. And in fact, according to the indictment now, and I have no reason to believe it's not true, you know, he even hid documents from his own lawyers when they were trying to comply with the subpoena in order to keep them. And this isn't new, Caitlin, the boxes thing. You know, when I was with him in 2016, his body guy at the time, Keith Schiller, used to carry a banker's box of papers that came from Trump Tower. And we would get on Trump's plane, and the first thing that would happen when he sat down is Keith would go and get that box and put it in the seat next to Trump. And Trump would open the box and he would start going through the papers. When they call up, you know, his beautiful mind boxes, that the staff called them, I knew exactly what they meant. It was like a security blanket for him.
But you're saying it wasn't something where, oh, he just had all this stuff with him and he didn't really know what was in there. It was just random boxes. You're saying he knew and kept track of these boxes.
He knew exactly what it was. And he would talk to you as he was going through papers in there. I'd say, oh, this is about this deal, or this is a story about this. And it would be a combination of, you know, paperwork and articles and magazines. As he said, that's the kind of stuff that was in there, except once you become president, you have access to classified documents and top secret documents and SCI documents, which are the most secret documents. And that's not stuff you can keep.
When you spent time with him at the White House, did you ever see him dealing with classified information in front of people who didn't have security clearances or anything that you remember?
I didn't. The only thing that he ever showed me, which I think he showed to lots of people, were the letters that he got from Kim Jong-un. He was very proud of those.
Yeah, but of course, what he's alleged to have taken now is so much more serious than
much more serious.
It's nuclear security secrets. He's had a litany of excuses for why he had these documents. This is just a culmination of some of them.
You can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it. I didn't have a document per se.
Did you ever show those classified documents to anyone?
Not really. Copies of different plans, copies of stories having to do with many, many subjects.
Why do you think his excuses keep changing for why he had those documents?
Because he's getting cornered. He's getting cornered, and he'll lie about anything. I think the latest lie is the one that he said just yesterday, right? Where he said, I wasn't really showing them anything. It was just bravado. He was essentially saying he was lying to the people he was sitting with, Mark Meadows' biographers and his own staff. But let me tell you something. That's what he does. When he is cornered, and he was cornered by the Bret Baier interview. The Bret Baier interview put him in a horrible box that I don't think he's ever going to be able to
Where
get
he
out
said
of.
it wasn't a document per se.
Well, that, but he also, the bigger problem he has, Caitlin, is that he admitted he had the documents, he knew about the grand jury subpoena, but he was too busy to go through the boxes to see what was classified and what wasn't. And he didn't want to just turn the boxes over because he had golf shirts and golf pants in there. I mean, come on. There's nobody in America who believes that story.
Does the bravado excuse remind you of when the Access Hollywood tape came out and his dismissal was, it's just locker room talk?
It's whenever he feels cornered, he makes up a story. It reminds me more particularly of when he didn't want to turn over his tax returns. And he all of a sudden came up with a story that he was getting legal advice saying that as long as he was under audit, that he couldn't turn them over. And that was a completely made up story as well.
You're a former federal prosecutor. How damaging is a tape like that at trial?
Well, it's always great to have evidence, either audio or videotape, of the person in their own words saying something, as opposed to a witness saying that someone said this. The tape is always the best to have it, either whether it's audio or audio and video, because the jury then knows they don't have to rely upon anybody else for the truth of what's being said in there. They can see it and hear it for themselves. So the tape is an incredibly important part of it, but it's not the only important piece of evidence that they have. I suspect that they will introduce at the time of trial. Caitlin, most of these indictments, when I did it for 7 years, we usually put a third to a half of the amount of evidence that we actually had in the indictment and saved stuff for later.
So you think there's more?
I do.
Rudy Giuliani was interviewed last week, I believe, by Jack Smith's investigators who are investigating January 6th and the efforts to overturn the election. What does it say to you that he voluntarily sat down with them, with Jack Smith's team? Does that mean, do you think that he's trying to get some kind of agreement?
I think that's Rudy's personality. Remember, Rudy was a U.S. attorney also, and he was a U.S. attorney in the most important district in the country, in Manhattan, in the Southern District of New York. So I don't think, even if Rudy got legal advice not to sit down, my guess is, knowing Rudy, that he feels like he could deal with whatever questions are going to be asked, and that's given his background, his experience, and I'm sure he's convinced he did nothing wrong. So I think with Rudy, it's not an indication that there's a deal being made, which it might be with other people. I think it's more that Rudy has this incredible self-confidence that he could sit down with a prosecutor and he will not be, knocked off.
How much risk do you think he's facing in this investigation and Trump himself?
On the January 6th side of things? Look, it's hard to tell everything that went on that day. I actually tried to talk to the president that day, and he wouldn't take the calls. To urge him to speak out and to get people out of the Capitol. So I don't know what everybody's role was, but look, this much we know for certain. It was an awful day in American history. We know that Donald Trump played a large role in encouraging it, not just on the day, but in everything he did from election night forward to January 6th, because he continued to spread the lie that the election was stolen. And we know that's not true, and there's no evidence to support that it is. He knew that too. But his ego wouldn't permit him to admit that he lost to Joe Biden. And believe me, if I lost to Joe Biden, I'd be feeling pretty hurt too. But the fact is, when it happens, it happens. And I don't think that Jack Smith, would be my guess, is not just looking at the speech on January 6th and what happened on January 6th. He's looking at everything that happened from election night forward.
Yeah, fundraising, we know all of that,
Everything.
Fake electors. Do you have concerns on how Trump would use his pardon power if he became president again?
Well, I don't like a lot of the ways he used it when he had it the first time.
Yeah, because he pardoned
Charles
Charlie
Kushner, sure. So and a number of other people I don't think he should have pardoned. But nonetheless, sure, that would not be my top concern if he were to become president again, but it would be on a list.
You haven't said whether or not you'd rule out pardoning him if you became president.
I don't think it's responsible to say it,
Why
Caitlin,
not?
but because having had the pardon power before, I will tell you what my inclination is. I don't think if he gets a fair trial that there's going to be any grounds to pardon him. And so my inclination is I don't think I would pardon him. Now, if I thought that he got an unfair trial, if I thought there were things that happened that led to an unfair result, then that's a different story. But based on what I know today, the answer is no. But having had the pardon power as a governor and how seriously I took it, what I'm telling you is that you got to watch to see how the trial goes too, because that's part of it. The last thing I'd say, and the reason why I don't think if I'm president that I'll ever confront this, is to get a pardon, you must also accept responsibility for your conduct. Donald Trump will never accept responsibility for his conduct. And so he won't even be able to accept a pardon if one were offered.
Of course, one thing, we're talking about the primary, the pull that he has on your party. That was on full display this week when House Speaker Kevin McCarthy did an interview where he questioned Trump's strength as a candidate, saying, is he the best candidate? I'm not so sure. He quickly backtracked on that. What does that say to you about how dependent Kevin McCarthy is on a Donald Trump?
Well, I think that Kevin's in a particularly difficult position, right? Because he needs to count to 218 every day, given the rules that he's operating under. So it's not an excuse for Kevin, but it's an explanation as to what he's up to. He's trying to get things done in the House of Representatives. He's managing a very difficult caucus and a very slim majority. And so I think that's why my guess is that's why he did what he did. But I think his first statement was what he really believes, which is that he doesn't think Donald Trump is the strongest candidate to be president.